Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and your excellencies. What a pleasure to be here, and thank you for that round of applause. I think we need a second one for the all-female panel. As our voice of God said, we're going to be talking about the gender disparity within cybersecurity. Women are still critically underrepresented, holding only 25% of the cybersecurity jobs globally. So my esteemed panel, we're going to get straight down to business. I would like to address my first question to Dr. Margaret. What are the primary challenges that organizers encounter when trying to not just attract, but retain women in cybersecurity?
Yes, first let me say I'm really happy to be here today. Thank you for having me. And I'm also happy to see such a big audience that is interested in this topic, because this does not happen so often. Sure. So I think this is something special about Saudi Arabia. Being here now for quite a few months, I've also learned that in Saudi, 58% of engineers are women, which is different to Europe. And it's different especially to German-speaking regions in Europe. And this is something which Saudi can really be proud of. I'm really happy to see that. Being in the board of Aramco Digital, I see it also in the daily work that 50% of our team members in the Security Operations Center are female, and this is a good, very, very good sign.
Why do they do it so well here in Saudi?
Well, there is a clear vision, Vision 2030, and it's in the vision. You can read it, you talk about it, you discuss about it, but most importantly, you do it. And this is something which is special here, and which I also wanted to mention. Now to your question, you have been asking about the challenges. So companies, really to be successful in the field of cyber, need diverse teams. They need mixed teams. We know this from the past. We know that companies, teams are much more successful if they take this into consideration. And why shouldn't it be true for cyber? It is true for cyber as it is for all the other areas. Now the companies and the organizations need to be authentic in this. So women feel very quickly if what the company talks or the organization talks is what the company do. Mm-hmm. And if this is in line, you will of course attract even more women in this sector. Looking at the different stages, of course, we also need a role model. And this is also a challenge for companies and organizations, so that often they are lacking role models. I was many years a role model. I was 15 years CEO of European IT companies, including a telecom company, which is like STC. It was called A1 for Central Eastern Europe. And yes, it was often clear that we were missing middle management. So women in middle management that could be a role model. So it's tough, it's hard, we still have to work on it.
We're going to come on to a little later in our conversation, roles and those roles at the top. But at this point, I would like to bring in Dr. Cecile, because you have some thoughts in terms of expanding on the security aspect, don't you?
Yes, thank you, Jane. And before I answer your question, if I may thank our guests. So first, Saudi Arabia, I'm absolutely delighted to be here and to discuss this question here, and of course the Global Cybersecurity Forum for providing this opportunity. When we think of cybersecurity, there is obviously the cyber dimension, and we know that some of the challenges come from girls in a number of contexts, not always being keen to pursue studies in the STEM and in technological areas. That seems to be less a case in Saudi Arabia, which is great. But there is, in addition to cyber, there is the security element. And if we look at security the way it is also construed, security is a sector in which women are far behind. I mean, obviously, when we look at defense, military, intelligence. And why do I say that? Because cybersecurity is multi-layered. And when we think cybersecurity, it's not only individual or business security, it's also state cybersecurity and cyber attacks, cyber warfare. Within this context, there are negotiations ongoing, obviously, notably at the United Nations, and we see that in those contexts, there are very few women involved in these negotiations. In fact, only about a third of women diplomats, we see women diplomats across sectors, and in the area of cybersecurity, these numbers are really lagging. So the combination of cyber challenges and security challenges is really probably also one of that convergence that we need to address.
But Tanya, you're sitting on the end. I want to just give a bit more context to your career because we see your cybersecurity innovation and partnerships manager at NEOM, but your previous roles, you're the former United Nations senior officer in counterterrorism and emerging technologies. Quite a title. I'd like you to elaborate, if you can, on how organizations can address the barriers that discourage women from entering fields, biases, lack of role models, which is something Dr. Margaret just touched on, misconceptions about cybersecurity roles. What has your experience been?
Thank you so much for the great question, and thank you again. I second my colleagues' words. I'm extremely happy to be here and very grateful to the organization of the GCF for having us. Yes, indeed, women in cybersecurity still face a lot of challenges. As you mentioned, gender bias, lack of representation, unequal opportunities. And I think that organizations and we all here in the room have a huge responsibility to make sure that this changes. So in my experience, one of the things that make women doubt whether cybersecurity is a path for them is the lack of information. So mentoring and correct education, paths and early exposure to cybersecurity and what it is one of the most important things that can encourage girls to get into this path. Then, I got into cybersecurity later in life, and maybe because of that lack of mentorship at an early age, but mentoring for me was key to have the luck and the privilege to have great mentors in my life who gave me the best guidance, advice, and encouraged me to challenge my own fears, and that allowed me to be here and to start a career that builds on different skills that I've had before. So organizations per se, I think that also need to work a lot in more inclusive hiring practices, anti-bias training for both men and women, because there is something that is still happening everywhere in the world, and even in the countries that are famous for their gender parity policies, there's still gender bias in technology and in cybersecurity as well. So yes, I think that this kind of forums, this kind of platforms for dialogue, I think are a great opportunity to encourage everyone to advocate for this kind of causes that will make the room fuller and fuller of women.
As a female actually doing it here in Saudi, what has been that experience and the change from coming from outside? How was it received?
Well, I was very lucky because when I first started thinking about moving to Saudi, to the Middle East, I was very lucky to have several opportunities here. And well, NEOM, do I need to even explain what NEOM has, and how amazing and exciting it is to be working? I consider myself so privileged. But something I did not know is that most of my colleagues would be Saudi, they will be from here, right? So although NEOM has 70% expats, my department is mostly Saudis because of regulations. So I was received with such generosity, such solidarity. From all levels, I was trusted with so much responsibility, and being a woman and being a foreigner, those are two elements that makes it even more impressive, and I think it speaks volumes of the massive changes of this country has been through, and how much they trust talent from all over the world.
Dr. Margaret, can you elaborate from a European perspective?
Well, Europe is in a very tough situation at the moment. So contrary to Saudi, which is growing at, I would say, 8% on average, Europe is really has slowed down.
Okay.
The age structure is completely different. So what I find exciting here, and being in the board of Aramco, building up Aramco Digital, we can see that we have this wonderful age structure with a lot of young people, excited people who want to change and want to be part of this transformation, also in the digital, especially in the digital area and in the cyber security. So the focus is, as you've heard also from the CEO of Aramco, that there is investment, and there is investment, for example, in Sabrani. Do we see similar big investments in Europe at the moment to a lower extent? So Europe still plays a role, but has to be very careful. And I think there will be different centers in this world. Of course, we have the US and we have China, but there is a big room for Saudi and its huge population and its engineers to play an important role here. And we are in the middle of this transformation, which makes it so exciting. For me, coming back to being successful, having successful innovations and competitive products always needs these two sides. So females bring completely different skills into the teams, and especially in the cyber, we can see, and in many digital jobs, it means from blue-collar worker to white-collar worker. Yeah? Think of a harbor. When you are in a harbor and you have to move the containers, this was pure blue-collar worker in the past. Now it's white-collar. Somebody sitting in a control center. As it is in cyber, you are doing things which you can do remotely, which you can do in a team. You don't have to be outside in the construction site. And this evolution of tech solutions has also helped to engage more women. Contrary to Europe, I think with Saudi and the many women in engineering, there is a really good basis here.
I want to bring in the element of family raising as well, and being a working mum myself, as you know, many of us are in this room. Can we have it all? Can we balance it? I think that makes it a little bit easier, some of these initiatives and, you know, the situations like remote working.
Yeah, I think what COVID has shown us is that different types of working is possible, and that it can be done in a different way. And this helps, of course, to combine the topics of family and kids and the jobs. From the company perspective, and being a CEO for 15 years, it is worth starting at the very beginning. So it all starts before the women are joining the company. Sometimes we think when we are managers, it starts when they are here. No, it starts in the acquisition or in the hiring process, where it is different to the male side, where you have to address women more directly, you have to invite them. It is a little bit different than it is on the other side.
Cecile, I think you have something to add in there.
Sure. Just the fact that flexible arrangements are important not only to attract women, but especially to retain women and to enable them to really make a career, which I think is one of the challenges. It's challenging in the cybersecurity for everyone. I mean, we need to really be also very clear that it's not only about women, it's difficult to attract men and have enough workforce. So the challenge is compounded for women, and it's important for companies to have ways of retaining women. Flexible working arrangements are important, but it's also important to ensure that women feel valued, feel that they belong in the companies, to retain them. And I think that's an important dimension. And when we think of inclusive workforce, it's not only having women sitting at the table, but being able to voice their concerns. And very often, because of a number of cultural expectations everywhere around the world, women are not likely to really ask for the floor. And so I think it's particularly important that men, who are of course the great partners in this adventure of having more women, extend their reach to women, that they also mentor women, young women, sponsor them, and really just make sure that women's views are also asked and considered. All of this is what makes women feel that they belong, that they have a role to play, and therefore to stay there.
Well, we did mention it earlier, and we were talking about roles. You know, what needs to be done, Cecile, I'm going to keep you on the floor. What needs to be done to ensure that enough roles are at the top of the chain? And how do we attain that, despite the fact that there is this leaky pipeline phenomenon, you know, stepping back and coming back into the room, you know, where maybe women are deemed to have lost some crucial years? What needs to be done about that?
So again, I think having working places that are inclusive, that are flexible enough to attract and retain women, that women feel that they belong there. But I think that some additional measures are needed. And I'll go back to the example that I was giving earlier, you know, the lack of women diplomats engaged in UN processes on cyber or even ICT in international security environment. Because that was a real concern, back in 2018, the UN Secretary General, Guterres, decided to really, he made a commitment to ensure that there would be more women appointed in the group of experts of the United Nations. And thanks to that commitment, which he took very seriously, more states nominated more women, and as a result, we really went from having 25% only of experts in 2018 to today 40% of experts being women that participate into these working groups. And similarly, in terms of diplomats participating in the negotiation, there's been fellowship, in particular Women in International Security in Cyberspace Fellowship, that has been targeting relatively junior diplomat women, but not only diplomats, regulators, ICT experts, lawyers working in these areas, professors working in these areas, and encouraging them over a number of years to come and participate, to be there in those UN working group, in particular the open-ended working group on the use of ICT in international security environment. And not only were they there, but then they were mentored, they had access to more senior leaders and diplomats that could train them, and they had specific training on participating in multilateral negotiations. Just to indicate that measures need to be multi-layered, that it's not simply, in fact, just thinking that it will happen unless the women are equipped with skills. And to go back to the question of how it works in the corporate sector, it's one thing to be a technical expert in cybersecurity, it's something else to be equipped with the skills to manage a team and then to make it to leadership role or board roles because you have leadership. And all of that with men usually happens through networking. Younger women that don't necessarily have older women to be playing that role model still need to benefit from that networking and learning those skills. So we need very deliberate efforts to really make sure that women are also trained with managerial and leadership skills.
But Tanya, I've seen you've been nodding all the way through that.
I absolutely agree in everything, and I don't know where to start.
Have you anything, I mean, in terms of your experience, in terms of female leadership at the top and what you've taken away from that, that has maybe helped you in your career progression?
Well, so as you mentioned earlier, like I don't come from a very traditional path to cybersecurity, if that's even a thing, right? So for some background, I'm a lawyer. I'm originally from Argentina, and then I moved to the U.S. for graduate studies, and I have degrees in international relations and cybersecurity law and policy, and now I'm pursuing my PhD in cybersecurity. So as you can see, I went from like building upon my legal and policy background to a more technical one. And honestly, I will go back to the mentorship and the fellowship that you were just mentioned. And networks of women have been so helpful for me while I was making these decisions through, because I don't consider I transitioned careers. I think I always say that I've been building upon my different roles and bringing what I've learned from my other experiences to my new roles. So I think that one of the most important things is representation, to see women on leadership roles, and to see women in tables where decisions are being made, to make sure that their voices are heard. And that's why we need men to advocate as well. We need you guys to look around the table. How come we don't have any women sitting in this meeting, for example? What is wrong? Couldn't find any women to come here and join us. That's why it's not only our fight, it's all of us responsibility to advocate for this happening. And in my experience, having really strong and determined women being my bosses, and women who mentored me, and even men who also gave me the opportunity to believe in myself, and they believed in me maybe more than I believed in myself back then, right? And I think those are the people that I am so grateful that I had the opportunity to meet. And there is a lot of generosity out there, and I know there are so many students here listening, and just don't be scared to reach out. You would be amazed. This room is full of generous people who are willing to tell you more about their careers, tell you more about their experiences, and guide you through your own career path so you can find success as soon as possible. So yeah, I think that these forums, again, are the perfect platform to have these conversations.
Dr. Margaret, how important are those supportive extended communities within the cybersecurity sphere?
Well, my opinion, it's the support of the different communities is key in all the areas. I've started out selling telephone systems. Now, selling telephone systems or being a technical director for telephone system is not the one thing you would have expected from somebody graduated from a business school. It happened more by coincidence,
yes.
But then you have to take the opportunity. And what I did is I was searching for mentors always myself. At that time in the 90s, that was really long ago, in the 90s...
I remember them, don't worry.
Yes, nobody was really into that mentoring and thought, yeah, you would need a mentor. So I was looking into, in that time, the tech community, and I was investigating who could be that, and I addressed the person. And yes, there were men, there were male managers, and not women, because there were no women there. I was the only one. So for a long period of time. Then gradually we got more. So the more you have the community of women, also you can also rely on them. But I'm a big fan of mixed teams, as I said before, and I'm a big fan of doing things together and not just in the separate areas. Looking at education, this is something I wanted to add on that. Maybe we can talk about that.
No, absolutely. I mean, I know Betania mentioned earlier, to get in at the earliest opportunity and learn about the field that you want to work in, but how can educational institutions maybe collaborate with industry partners and create, I guess, curricula that will appeal and empower women to pursue careers in this field, and especially from an earlier age, like you said, Betania?
Yeah. The earlier we start, the better. So at a very young age, to encourage the girls to attend classes, extra classes, and so on. And it, of course, needs to be a little bit adapted to their interest. And what I did, for example, in Austria, I introduced a new form of apprenticeship on e-commerce.
Sure.
So we had a lot of apprenticeship. You must know that in Austria, 50% of young people choose apprenticeship. It's a little bit different than all in other countries in the world, except for Germany, Switzerland, and Austria. And introducing this apprenticeship for e-commerce suddenly led in 60% of the young people who chose this being women. So because they were interested in that. And I was not taking care, I didn't care where they would start. They don't need to start in mechatronic, but they can start in the e-commerce. They can start in the cyber, which are more fields which are of their interest because they are more in the area which they like.
But Tanya, I know you're going to. I
yeah.
know this is coming, coming for you.
It's something that I'm very passionate about, maybe because of how I had to navigate it myself. So I feel really passionate about women and girls getting into the field, and even if they're not in the field yet, to try to see how technology can can intersect that area of expertise that you have, and slowly, transition into a more technological role. That's what I saw,
Yeah.
building from technology and policy. So I think that besides what Margaret was saying regarding early exposure, I would say, again, mentoring, extremely important mentoring programs, and we at NEOM are extremely involved in mentorship and scholarship programs with different institutions here in Saudi and abroad. And that helps a lot, because sometimes different elements makes it difficult for girls and women to pursue careers in technology, and those things help a lot. So that's something that the tech industry can also collaborate and give that step forward in helping the next generation of cyber leaders also be 50-50.
Cecile?
Yes, on education is so crucial, and as a former professor, I really cannot but say that yes, education is absolutely critical. I think that the partnerships between industry and education facilities is not only in terms of the curriculum. I think that there is also something else that we have discussed here, which is protection of children in fact, the cyberspace. And this will be growing. This is already a big concern today. How do we protect children, and how do we ensure that children are secure and safe when using the cyberspace?
Yes.
But it's also going to grow, because we are probably facing radical changes in education. I mean, in the next generation is probably going to be largely educated in schools that are not only very equipped, but very connected, and the very context of what is education is dramatically changing in our lifetime, which really means that we have to be taking very seriously the issue of child protection and of educating children, not only in terms of cybersecurity to become expert, but to become responsible for their own security in the digital space and in the cyberspace. So I think that we are going to necessarily see partnerships there, and they're welcome, because it's a different way of in fact being human that our children are facing in terms of their career and their life.
We've got 1 minute on the clock. I'm going to start at the end with Batania. I would like you in 20 seconds. What's the biggest challenge in the next 5 years for women in cybersecurity?
I would say, like, losing the fear to getting into the field. Ask for help, ask for mentorship, don't be scared. You deserve a seat in that room, and I very much look forward to seeing that in the next 5 years.
Amazing. Cecile?
I think it's not only for women, it's for women and men.
Yes.
Far too often, men may feel threatened by the fact that women are also entering the market, the different markets, including cybersecurity. And I think it's extremely important that we reframe that. It's a win-win. It's not that one is expulsing the other. It's really that we can have mixed team working together and becoming that much more innovative, and in fact creating even much more of a market for everyone to work together. So I think partnerships is absolutely key, and that men as much as women have a key role to play. And I want to then take the opportunity to say how impressed I am being in Saudi Arabia to see how much has been achieved. So big kudo as well here.
Last word, Dr. Margaret.
Well, for me, it's for the young generations to tell them, be brave, take the opportunity, create the opportunity. There is never a better moment than this moment, and especially here, where so much transformation is going on.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us for this session. And to my esteemed panel, thank you.